There's something romantic and really fascinating about taking what little is known about a person who lived in the past and writing a story around those few known facts. We're going to take a look at a book like that today. The topic is historical fiction. Hi, I'm Justine and this is Bookends. Today I'm going to chat with Cathy Marie Buchanan about her new book called The Painted Girls. It's about the little girl who was the subject behind Edgar Degas' famous statuette, Little Dancer. Cathy's going to talk a little bit about the inspiration, and we're at McNally Books to get a few other recommendations. I'm joined by Cathy Marie Buchanan. Hi, Cathy.
Hi.
So you got the idea behind this book watching a documentary about Degas and his famous statuette.
Right.
What is it about the story that really captivated your imagination?
I think it is the nature of art to take on new meaning over time, but the extent to which this has happened for Little Dancer, age 14, is really quite extreme. When Degas exhibited Little Dancer, age 14, back in 1881, you know, the criticism of it was they called her a flower of the gutter. They said that her face was imprinted with the detestable promise of every vice. And yet today the sculpture is beloved. And I think it was this sort of, the new meaning that this piece of art has taken on over time was the thing that I found really fascinating.
Did your view of Marie, I mean the girl, the little dancer, did it change yourself when you saw the documentary?
Yes. I mean, I'd grown up knowing about Little Dancer, age 14, but when I saw the documentary, it got into the seedier side of the Paris Opera Ballet. Back in the 1800s, it was very much in vogue to have a ballet mistress, ballet girl as your mistress, and many of the girls that were sent there were from poverty-stricken families sent for the better life, which often meant having a liaison with one of these wealthy male subscribers to the dance. So when I watched the documentary, I found out about this seedier side of the Paris Opera Ballet, also the privation of this young girl, Marie van Gotham, who'd modeled for the work, and that was certainly new revelations for me.
And did that surprise you, what ballet was like back then? You were a ballet dancer yourself, and I mean, these days, you know, it's something for the middle class, upper class to do, not you know, the way it was in the 19th century.
It was a huge surprise for sure, yeah. I mean, I danced, as you said, quite seriously throughout my teenage years. There were, in fact, Edgar Degas ballet girl prints tacked to the walls. You know, I think these ballet girls were something that I aspired to be. I felt a kinship with them. Sometimes Degas was painting them in all their glory on the stage, but often as not, just like I was, they were stretching at the bar, scratching their backs, those kinds of things. So, you know, it struck me how different their existence was, in fact, than my own.
You must be a history buff. You've written historical fiction before. You're working on another historical fiction book. What do you like about the genre, about historical fiction?
I think for me as a writer, first of all, I love doing the research. I could research and research and research. There does come a time where I have to say to myself, okay, fingertips to keyboard, enough's enough, Start writing. Yes, so that's for sure. I really do love creating another time and place, and I think that's what the appeal of writing historical fiction is for me.
Do you think it has any limitations, or more limitations for writers, or more advantages?
I mean, so far what I've done is I've taken, in both The Day the Fall Stood Still and The Painted Girls, lesser-known historical characters and created a life for them. And I like that I'm not writing about Catherine the Great or Henry VIII. There's very little known about Marie van Gotham. They know that she was a poor girl, that her father, a tailor, was dead, that her mother was a laundress, that she was trained at the Paris Opera Ballet School and later promoted to the Corps de Ballet. So I like having these few facts that I have to incorporate, but like having you know, lots of room to use imagination and make up my own story.
Now, having done the research that you did on Paris in the 19th century, knowing what you know now about that time, would you ever want to live then, as opposed to now in the 21st century?
Yeah. No, you know, it's interesting. I was recently asked in what time period I would most want to live, and I have to say, as a commoner and a woman, I would like to live now if I had, you know, my druthers. I mean, absolutely, it's still, there are some tough circumstances for women, but you know, back in the 1880s in Paris, there was very few options for women. the demi-monde.
Now, another main topic in the book is the love and struggles between sisters.
Right.
And you have sisters yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
how much of that relationship in the book is based on your own experiences when you were growing up?
I think writers tend to, well, their preoccupations tend to find a way onto the page. And I have my 3 younger sisters. We're really very tight, despite some really quite alarming teenage rows. So, I've certainly spent time pondering the mysteries of sisterhood, both the rivalries and the love. And I think it's quite natural that sort of sisterhood found its way to being a major theme in the Painted Girls.
Now, here's a big question I have for you. How in the world did you end up being a writer? You have a science degree, you worked in the corporate world, you've said before that you used to hate writing, and yet here you are.
I think I always had an artistic bent. In high school, I was doing all that dancing. I was also sewing and designing pretty much all of my own clothes. While I was working in the corporate world, so I was at IBM for 10 years, I was always taking something at night school, and it was always something artistic. So I took painting and drawing and art history and woodworking, interior design, and I eventually hit upon creative writing, but it was really more of a whim than anything else. I had the Ryerson continuing education calendar at home, and I was flipping pages and thought, why not take a stab at creative writing? So I think in these night school courses, I was trying to sort of feed my creative soul the same way that I had in high school through the dance. But right from that very first creative writing class, I was smitten.
Okay, you say something in your bio as well. It says here that you believe that your parents' tendency to throw caution to the wind helped shape you as a writer. What do you mean by that?
I'll give you an example of my parents throwing caution to the wind. Back in 1973, so when I was 10 years old, my parents decided that we would go camping in Mexico for 2 months. So they packed up, the 7 of us. They bought a camper van. They'd never been camping in their lives. My youngest sister was 2. And we drove across America, down one coast of Mexico, into Belize, up the other coast. It's just not a typical thing for a family to do. So I think, leaving the corporate world, people often say, wow, that's so gutsy, but I think I come from a gutsy heritage, and I think it probably helped me make that transition.
Cathy, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I'm now joined by Ben McNally. Hi, Ben.
Justine, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Great to see you.
You as well. So, historical fiction, what do you think really interests writers and readers as well to historical fiction, basing something on fact?
Well, when historical fiction is really good, it is a reflection of right now. So the best thing about historical fiction is it's a good way to write about the present time without seeming like preachy or anything else like that. So good historical fiction always makes you think about things that are happening right this very minute.
How much leeway do you think writers should have or do have when writing historical fiction? I guess it depends on how much you know about the person or the event.
Well, I'm a bit of a purist. I don't think they should be allowed to make things up that are in violation of known fact. And the people who do it best, and the people who do it, I think, most artistically, are the ones who look for gaps where there's some question as to what happened, and then that's where that interpretation comes in. Say, well, why did this person do this? That's where novelists really pitch their tent. It's okay. What is the intent? Is it successful? What motivates these people? And that's where the reflection in modern day comes into play too, right? What's motivating us? Why are people behaving the way that they do?
So you have 3 other recommendations here. Why don't we start with this one? What's this one here?
Well, this is a book called The Paris Wife, and it's interesting because Ernest Hemingway and his first wife, Hadley Richardson, had their son in Toronto, and then they went off to Paris. So Hemingway, a noted writer, again, a little bit of room for a novelist to find some space to do some creative work, but the framework is there. So in a lot of cases, all you have to do is do some research, and then the factual part takes over, and you have to make your characters fit into that factual framework. But a very, very popular book, and a very popular book club book.
I have heard of that one, and I've heard of this one as well, The Winter Palace. What is this one based on?
This is Eva Stasiak's book about Catherine the Great, and it's told from the point of view of a maid, and very interesting history behind Catherine the Great. Her mother was, one of the first evil mothers who insisted on her daughter being pushed to the fore. But this is the story of Catherine the Great's rise to power, Empress of all the Russias, but told from a point of view of a serving maid, and so there's distance, but again, factual. The factual parts are really almost as interesting as anything you could make up.
And what's the last one here?
The last one's a book called Witchlight, and this is based on a true character named Charles Leslie, who was an Irishman, who was sent to interrogate a young woman named Corag in this book, who's accused of witchcraft. And what she's really accused of is having warned the McDonalds that the massacre of Glencoe was going to happen.
Ben, thank you so much.
Thanks, Justine. Always a pleasure to see you.
Absolutely. So you can find more information about these 3 books as well as Cathy's book on our website, bookendstv.com.